We greet you once again from our ministry, Revelation 14:1, located here in Santa Rosa, California. We praise God for your lives, all of you who are viewing this recording from whichever part of the world you may be, and we hope that whatever little we try to share will enable us to relook at the what we've come to believe over the years about some of the doctrines of the church that we have been taught since we were little till we became adults and involved with Christianity. Our topic today will be concerning Israel, the nation of Israel, something that has been out in the news a lot when the President of the United States went against the whole of the United Nations when he said that he will support Israel in declaring that Jerusalem is the capital, and he will honor that by moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv, where it is located today, right into Jerusalem. So we have been studying about prophecies about Jerusalem and what will happen to Jerusalem in these last days. So everything that is coming out in the news today is in fulfillment of what Bible prophecies have predicted a long time back. So that's the advantage of studying prophecies. It is like a light into the future. Things have not happened, and you will be able to know because the Bible has already foretold about it. Today's topic, God's chosen people. God's chosen people. And we know from the Bible that they were the descendants of Abraham, who became the nation of Israel. So, God's chosen people is our topic today, the 23rd of December, 2017. Okay, we may ask this question, who are God's chosen people? That is answered appropriately in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. It says, "For thou art an holy people." This was Moses talking about the people who followed him out of Egypt. "Holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth." Why did this? Why did God favor these people? Remember, after Noah, before Noah, the world was destroyed because of sinfulness. After Noah, the world began to deteriorate again into the same sinful state. And then Abraham was called out from Ur, where his father or his ancestors lived. And he was promised that his future generation will be used by God for his benefit. So now Moses, after getting the Israelites, the descendants of Jacob, out of Egypt after 400 years, they are now in the wilderness, and this is what is happening. God had promised them that they are a special people unto himself, unto God. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 6. Also in chapter 14 verse 2, it says, "For thou art an holy people," the same people, "unto the Lord thy God, and the Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself, above all the nations that are upon the earth." So we may ask, why is it that these people become special? Is God favoring a particular group of people, the Israelites, over other people? Are they better than the others? We will answer that as we move on. Yes, they are a chosen people. God himself, according to Moses, chose them as his vessel so that they may represent him wherever they go. Remember, here they are coming out of Egypt and going towards the promised land, Canaan. Yes, they were a chosen group of people. Abraham was called out of his father's land. Few hundred years earlier, Abraham was called out, and he went out with faith that God was leading him along. Joseph, his great-grandson, took Abraham's descendant to Egypt. Remember, Abraham had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob was the father of the 12 children, the 12 tribes. And Moses, Joseph brought them into Egypt, and over time they became slaves unto the Egyptians, because they became more powerful. So the Egyptians thought that they will, if we don't do something, these people will overtake us. So they made them slaves in Egypt, and they stayed there for over 400 years. The 10 Commandments were given to these people. This was why these people were peculiar. The very law of God, which was in existence from the beginning, was physically handed over to Abraham, written on 2 tablets of stone. So this special group of people were given the special, the laws of God, to be the bearer of the law. 40 years later, the 10 Commandments was given again before they crossed into Canaan. Remember, 40 years the Israelites walked and lived in that wilderness in the Arabian Peninsula. That was where they spent 40 years, where most of their people who came, the elders who came from Egypt, died during that 40 years. And those who crossed over into Canaan, there was only Joshua, and who was the other person that joined Joshua as a spy? Caleb. Those were the only 2 adults who left Egypt and they went into Canaan. The rest died in the wilderness, 40 years. And during that 40 years, they carried God's law, God's commandment, the 10 commandments with them. These same commandments that we have right here behind us. So these were the chosen people. God trusted them with his law to spread unto others and to the world over. They were the bearers of the law. The unwritten law from the beginning was physically given to Moses written on a tablet of stones. So those laws did not come into existence there in Mount Sinai. They were right there from the beginning. When Cain killed his brother, what was his brother's name? Abel. When Cain killed Abel, he knew he had done wrong. How did he know? Because he had the unwritten commandments. He knew of the unwritten commandments. Who told him? His parents told him about the unwritten commandments. And it says, thou shalt not kill. After he killed Abel, he became guilty. He knew he has done wrong, not only to his parents, but to God himself. So those laws, even though a few thousand years later was physically given to Moses, it had been in existence right from the beginning. They wandered the wilderness for 40 years with the law, and they were supposed to spread it to the Gentiles who occupied the land of Canaan. God eyed these people. He loved those people who were in the land of Canaan. And he wanted these Israelites who came out of Egypt to go in and live with them and spread God's love to them. Did that happen? No, it didn't. Both, because of both. Not only the Israelites not actively sharing the word of God, but because of the rejection of those who occupied the land. They wandered the wilderness for 40 years with the law, and they were supposed to spread it to the Gentiles. They became selfish and kept it for themselves, in opposition to God's intention to make it known to all that they come across. So God's plan for these chosen people to spread his truth among the people of the land did not materialize. They did not do it. They thought, we will keep that special, that chosen status with God. We should not share it with these idol worshippers. No. They were going against the God that they served. Instead, they labeled them dogs, unclean, and other labels which they used over the years. This is the chosen people that we're talking about here. Chosen people, the descendants of Abraham. 40 years were given to Jericho. Okay, so what happened is, as soon as they came out of Egypt, they came across Mount Sinai, and God gave them the Ten Commandments. God gave them the Ten Commandments. And they came into Canaan. They were about to cross into Canaan, and what happened? Moses sent spies. Remember? 20 spies was sent, and they were sent in twos. And Caleb and Joshua went together. They went and they came back. They said, that land is full of fertile land. The fruits, everything is good. But all the people that occupy that land, they are giants. We don't have any chance against them. They will crush us like ants. But the pair of Joshua and Caleb came back. They reported the same thing, but then they said that land is plentiful. One other thing, God, the God that we serve, has given that land to us. There are giants living in there. But if God has given that land to us, why should we fear? Let's move in and take the land over. Now, did that happen? No, they didn't, because of the fear of the people, of the giants that occupied the land. So God was so cross with them that this is what he said. Joshua chapter 2 verses 9 to 11. And she said unto the man, I know that the Lord hath... Oh, sorry. Yeah. This is about the lady Rahab. She was a prostitute. And listen to what she said. She was in Jericho when the spies came. And she said unto the man, I know that the Lord hath given you the land. See, this is one of the occupiers. It was a woman. She is a prostitute. So every passing man that passed Jericho would have visited this prostitute. And she had heard about things that are going on outside in other worlds. She had heard about the Israelites. And they are on their way to Canaan. And now she's telling the spies, I know that your God has given this land to you. Given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us. And that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. We are so terrified about the news about you on the other side of Jordan. So we are getting ready to defend our land against you. Verse 10 says, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea. A few months earlier, when they crossed the Red Sea, the people in Jericho had already heard about that. So they said, the God that the Israelites are worshipping is the true God. Only a true God can clear the Red Sea and let these millions of people cross. That's the true God. So they already knew about this true God. The God of this chosen group. For you, when you came out of Egypt, and what he did unto the two kings of the Amorites that were on the other side, Jordan, Sihon, and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. So you see, not only Rahab, the prostitute, knew about this, the whole city of Jericho knew. They were supposed to go out, meet the Israelites, and tell them, your God is the only true God. We want to worship that God. So they already had their chance. So this was 40 years later. Jericho, when they were about to move into Canaan, after 40 years in the wilderness, this woman remembered that day. And he said, we heard, you just crossed the Red Sea, and we heard it here. And I am ready to give myself to the God that helped you cross that Red Sea. That the door of probation had closed. Even though Rahab and his family were saved, no other person in Jericho was saved. The door of probation had closed. For the inhabitants of Canaan, their probation was over 40 years, was given to them to welcome the descendants of Abraham into their promised land they were occupying. They knew about that, the occupiers of the land of Canaan. Jericho and subsequent cities fell as God fought with the Israelites. There was death and murder and stealing taking place. Were they breaking the law? That's another thing that we should consider. When they came in and they overtook the land, people were killed. They had to take their belongings. They were stealing. The law says you should not be doing that, but the people of God, the chosen people, the Israelites, were doing this. The question that we should ask is, were they breaking this law? And we know that when you break the law, transgression, sin is the transgression of the law. So that's another topic that we can dig into further. Were they breaking the law when God sanctioned the killing? God sanctioned the pilfering of their what the people owned. They were stealing. But God had sanctioned. So we will dig into that in that topic sometimes in the future. Probation closed on the nations. Okay, let's go back to the people of Canaan. 40 years earlier, just like Rahab, just like Jericho, they heard about the Red Sea crossing. So they should have sent their people, go visit those people. They are in that wilderness. Tell them that we trust in the God that they serve. We want to be the worshiper of that God too. Did they do that? No, they waited 40 years and never. They were comfortable in the idols that they were worshipping. No wonder God gave them all that 40 years to come to their senses and to know that the God of the Israelites who are coming down this way is the only true God. God gave them 40 years to decide. Come to me or you will die. They chose to die. Jericho and other cities of Canaan had 40 years to send and learn of the God of Israel, who they all heard, parted the Red Sea. The God of Israel parted the river Jordan again 40 years later. Before they cross into Canaan, they have to cross the river Jordan. The same thing that happened on the Red Sea happened there on River Jordan. God parted the waters and they crossed on dry land. Even Jericho, who was the first city they will come to, should have said, we open up the cities, just let them come in and we will worship their God together. They didn't. 7 days they went around Jericho, 7 days. Did they open up the cities? No. So God even gave them that extra 7 days to come out and say, we love the God of Israel. They didn't. So their probation closed. The God of Israel parted the river Jordan again 40 years later to lead his people into Canaan. All the occupiers of Canaan had a chance, like Rahab, to personally accept the God of Israel. The Bible only records Rahab to have survived this invasion of God's people. There may be others which are not recorded, but Rahab the prostitute, that sinful lady, was the one who saw what God was doing and believed in faith that this is the only true God. I will worship this God together with my enemies, the Israelites. She was saved. Probation for Israel. So we see that we all have a probationary time. Those cities, those people who were occupying Canaan were given 40 years to decide whether they wanted God or not. Let's see about the nation of Israel, the chosen people that we are exploring today. When Israel kept the law, they were assisted by God. what happened when they did not do that? That very law that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, they carried around there for 40 years. They took them across the river Jordan into Canaan. They were the bearers of God's law. What happened when they did not keep his law? In Joshua chapter 7, I'll read, "But the children of Israel committed a trespass in the accursed thing for Achan, the son of Carmi." They broke one of his laws. We are their relationship with God. Judah, the son of Zerah, the tribe of Judah, took off the accursed thing, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against the children of Israel. And Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai. Remember, they went into Jericho and they took things out from there. And this man, Achan, took some accursed things, some idols. Remember, they just came out of Egypt 40 years earlier. They came out of Egypt 40 years earlier. And in Egypt, they witnessed the worshipping of idols. Idol worship. Most of them were even worshipping idols in Egypt. So when they came into Jericho after the walls had fallen and they were killed, they killed the occupiers of Jericho. This man looked at some of the idols there, and his mind was right back in Egypt, where our idols were worshipped. So he took some of these, and that was the cause of God's anger on the nation of Israel. Verse 3 says, "And they returned to Joshua and said unto him, Let not all the people go up." Now verse 2, "And Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai." The next city to conquer was Ai, which is beside Bethaven, on the east of Bethel, and spake unto them, saying, Go up and view the country. And the men went up and viewed Ai. They returned to Joshua, said, Let not all the people. Oh, that's an easy target. Just send a few people up there. Let about 2,000 or 3,000 men to go up and smite Ai, and make not all the people to labor thither, for they are but few. So there went up thither the people, about 3,000 men, and they fled before the men of Ai. As soon as they begin to not follow that commandment which was in their hands, God will depart from them. Jericho, a miracle took place. The wall just fell. But they said, don't send too many people there. You're wasting our time. That city will just go. Overconfident. Because now they are worshipping the idols of Jericho. They were chased away by the men of Ai. And the men of Ai smote of them about 36 men. For they chased them from before the gate even unto Shebarim, and smote them in the going down, wherefore the hearts of the people melted and became as water. They were really affected. Their morale was affected because of their lack of faith, because their mind was misdirected back onto the idols of Egypt, which they found right there in Jericho. Okay, so that's what happened. The story of the people of Israel, his chosen people, we've read the verses which says God chose these people to be his bearers, of the bearer of his law. But 800 years later, let's see what happened there. As Daniel was a prisoner in Babylon, he was crying and praying for the Jewish nation. So they came in, they divided the land up, and they lived there. They started off with King Saul, or they started off with the judges, and then they wanted a king just like the nations. So God allowed them to have a king, King Saul. The second king was King David. The third king was King Solomon. After King Solomon, the nation was divided into two. The 10 nations, the 10 tribes that formed the northern nation was called Israel. And then the southern tribes, by two of the tribes, was called Judah. By now, 800 years later, the northern tribe have vanished. They've been taken prisoner and they just vanished into the world. But the generations of Judah, the 2 tribes, were left on the land, and then Nebuchadnezzar came over from Babylon, invaded Judah, burnt down the temple in Jerusalem that was built by King Solomon, and took them prisoner. And now, a few years later, Daniel was one of the trusted men in Judah, in Babylon. And he was crying to the Lord, when will we go back to our land, to the promised land that you gave us? He was crying to God, and Gabriel appeared to him in a vision. And the vision that he gave him was about a 2,300-day prophecy. So in Bible prophecy, a day is equal to a year. How did we get that? Numbers chapter 14, verse 34. This is what the verse says. After the number of the days in which you search the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall he bear your iniquities, even 40 years, you shall know my breach of promise. What does that mean? Remember the story of Joshua and Caleb and the other 10 spies? They went up into Canaan, they came back. How long did it take them to go and return? It was 40 days. So when God was displeased with these people, why? Because they said, no, those people, God cannot help us overcome those giants. They are too big. They crush us like ants. God was so furious with them that he said, you guys, you sent spies up there, they spent 40 days, but you, the whole nation of Israel, the whole chosen people, my chosen people, will have to spend 40 years. 1 day to a year. 1 day for their being out spying the land will cost you 1 year out in the wilderness. So forget about going into the promised land for now. For 40 years you'll be out here in the wilderness. And that's exactly what happened to them. This is the vision. It's recorded in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27. We'll finish with this vision. I'll try and go through it very fast, not into too much detail, but let's read the verses. Would you be able to focus more closely? Daniel 9:24 says, so Daniel, the story goes that Daniel was crying, God, the prophet, was it Jeremiah, had prophesied that we will be here 70 years. That 70 years is just about done now. please tell us, when are we going back to our homeland, Judah, and Jerusalem, our capital city? This is what the angel Gabriel told him. Okay, Daniel, this is what God has given me to tell you. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. How many weeks? 70 weeks. So he said, Daniel, you and your people are given 70 weeks, using what we've just gone through, 1 day to a year. 1 week is 7 days. So when you're talking about 1 week, you're talking about 7 years in Bible prophecy. But in this case it says 70 weeks are given to your people, you and your people. And how long is that? 70 times 7. That's 490. 490. So he's saying 490 years are given to you, Daniel, you and your people. What should you do within that time? You will go back, the people, upon thy holy city, Jerusalem, to finish the transgression. When you go back, make sure you guys were taken out of that city because of your sinfulness. That's why Nebuchadnezzar came. I did not protect you because of your sinfulness. Just like I did not protect you against the people of Ai. I did not protect you against Nebuchadnezzar. But go back and finish up all that breaking of the law that you did. No more of that. Within these 490 years. I give you 490 years. Make reconciliations for iniquity and bring in everlasting righteousness. Righteousness. Work amongst yourselves. Work godly things. And to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. During these 490 years too, the most holy, the prophesied Messiah will come in, will arrive on this earth, and you and your people will be there to anoint him. Okay? So if we look down on the chart here, the 490 years started from 457 BC. And it took 490 years. 490 years comes to 34 AD. From 457 BC was when, Daniel asked Gabriel, hey Gabriel, but when do I start counting for that 490 years? For that 70 weeks you've just told me. And Daniel, if you read the book of Daniel chapter 9, Gabriel told him, you will have to wait for the commandment that will be given by the king of Persia. And he will give the commandment for your people to go back and rebuild the city of Jerusalem. Rebuild the temple. And that command came in this year, 457 BC. This is well recorded in history. And 490 years later is 34 AD. So during that 490 years, what did God want them to do? To finish the transgression of the law. They should clean themselves up. God expects his chosen people to be a sinless group of people. Sinless. That's what he expected of them. During that 490 years, you should finish the transgression. No more sin. So he expected his people on earth to be sinless. When we are still sinning, then we cannot be his people, his chosen people. I always wonder that because I know that am a sinful person. I do things, I think things which are ungodly. God wants his people to finish off with transgression. Have nothing to do with sin, with the breaking of the law. So that's what he expected. During that 490 years, he expected his people to finish all the transgression. Remember, those people were given 40 years. Jericho and all the cities of the plain of Canaan. The chosen people were given 490 years to finish their transgression. So they were given more time, much more than... Verse 25, the next verse says, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. So Gabriel is now clarifying to Daniel, when will the count start for that 490 years? He's saying here, when the going forth of the commandment to restore. The time Babylon had fallen to Medo-Persia. Medo-Persian king Artaxerxes was the one who gave this commandment. He wrote it and sealed it with his ring, and he told the people, go and rebuild Jerusalem. That's your capital city. Even the Persians recognized it. Today, Islam is not recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. When this Persian king, Persia is today Iran, was the one who gave that commandment in 457 BC. He recognized that Israel is, that Jerusalem is the capital of the nation of Israel. You see, the Bible is so clear. When they are claiming that it's their capital of Palestine, it's all a lie. The Bible is so clear on whose capital it is. It was King Solomon who built that temple. So that 490 years, but it says here 7 weeks, 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. So it says 7 weeks. So it divides the sections up. 7 weeks is how many days? 1 week is 7 days. So 7 weeks is 49 days. 49 days is equal to 49 years. And it took them exactly 49 years to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple that was damaged by Nebuchadnezzar, to rebuild the whole of Jerusalem. And they started living there again. Excuse me. 49 years. That's this first section of the chart that we have here. 49 years from 457 BC to 408 BC. We're counting down towards 0. 49 years, they rebuild the temple and the city of Jerusalem. And then it says, second section of that prophecy is 62 weeks. 60 is 3 times 20. A score is 20, so 3 times 20 is 60. 60 days. Sorry, 60 weeks. 60 weeks, and that says 62 weeks. So 62 weeks. 62 weeks times 7 will give you the number of days, and the number of days converted to years is 434. So we already have a 49 years here, and then another 434 years to bring us up to 27 AD. What did this prophecy say? Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment, this commandment that went here in 457, to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince. So after that, here, the Messiah the Prince will appear on the scene. 27 AD is when Jesus was baptized on the river Jordan by John the Baptist. Exactly like prophecy, just like clockwork. It happened just as God had already foreseen and foretold Daniel. 27 AD. So that brings us up to here, the beginning of the ministry of Christ. Right up here. Remember, this prophecy is for Daniel and his people, the chosen people that we started off with. So Jesus came to live among these chosen people. Jesus was part of the chosen people. But let's see what else this prophecy tells us. Verse 26, chapter 9, verse 26. And it says, after the 62 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off. We know that the Messiah appeared here. This prophecy says, after that, the Messiah, sometime after that, the Messiah will be cut off. But not for himself. And the people of the prince shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolation are determined. So it says, things will happen after 27 AD, when Christ started his ministry. And specifically, that the Messiah will be cut off. And we know exactly the story of Jesus, what happened to him. He died 3.5 years after the beginning of his ministry on 27 AD. Verse 27 says, and he shall confirm the covenant of many for 1 week. Remember, they were given 70 weeks in that prophecy. From here up to here is 69 weeks. 69 weeks. 1 more week was left, and that's 1 week. It's not in proportion, but I wanted to open that up so that we can understand. And it says in this, the Messiah will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. But in the midst of that 1 week, in the middle, 1 week is 7 days, which is equal to 7 years. So this period from here to there is 7 years. In the middle of that 7 years, this happened. It says the Messiah will be cut off. Things happen. And Christ was crucified in the middle of that last week. The 70th week. That prophecy, the 2,300-day prophecy, this is the first section of 490 years. The balance of 1,810 years is another prophecy. But we are only looking at the first part of this prophecy, 490 years. In the middle of that last week, 3.5 years after 27 AD, it was 31 AD, Jesus was crucified on the cross. And it says, the sacrifice will have to stop, because the real sacrifice is now hanging on that tree. Jesus Christ. So you don't have to bring your sheep, or your cattle, or your bird to the priest, because they all represented Christ, who was going to die. All those sacrifices were to come and die, killed. Jesus died on 31 AD. And it says, the sacrifice, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. No more sacrifice. If some people are still doing the sacrifice today, they are not following God's law. So that's the end of that prophecy about the chosen people. At the 3.5 years after that, in 34 AD, or at the end of that 70-year period, God gave these chosen people another 3.5 years to repent of their ways. They have now killed Jesus Christ on the cross. So God gave them, if you realize that you've killed the Messiah that is prophesied in the Bible, you can repent and I will forgive you. Did they do that? Just like the people of Canaan. They had 40 years. They were supposed to welcome them and their God, the Israelites who came over from Egypt. When the time came to they cross the Jordan, no one wanted to welcome them. They did not want the God that they bring along, the one that can open up the Red Sea and the River Jordan. They did not want that. Likewise for us. Most of us keep rejecting the truth about the God that we serve. 3.5 years later, they stoned Stephen. Remember the story of Stephen? Saul, who later became Paul, was the organizer. He repented. He repented of his ways and became one of the chosen people. So who then are the chosen people? The very people that we've studied about in Deuteronomy that God earmarked for his special work are the very one that killed Jesus on the cross. Do you think they're still the special people? No. If they live in Israel, then their capital is still Jerusalem. Yes, of course. There's nothing to argue about that because the Bible tells us that. But are they still the special people? No, they are not. No longer. Just like the people of Jericho, they rejected Jesus. The people of Jericho rejected the God that opened up the sea, Red Sea. These chosen people, when Jesus came, the Messiah, prophesied by Daniel, came and lived amongst them, they nailed him to the cross. They rejected Jesus. They are still waiting today for their Messiah. So are they still the chosen people? It's just common sense. Deuteronomy chapter 14 verse 2. We will go back. Who are the chosen people? During that time, yes. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself. Talking about the Israelites then, yes, they were the chosen people then. In the apostolic era, in Titus chapter 2 verse 14, it says, who gave himself for us? Who is that? Jesus Christ. The very person that the chosen people, the original chosen people rejected. Now Paul is writing to Titus about Jesus. And he says, he gave himself for us. Who? Jesus. That he might redeem us from all iniquity and purify unto himself a peculiar people, zealous of good work. So he's talking about a different group of people, not the Jews. Not the Jews. Because now they were chased away from Jerusalem. All the synagogues were close to them. They did not welcome them in the synagogues anymore because they were preaching about Jesus now. So they went out to the Gentile world. And the Gentile flocked in numbers. They accepted Jesus as their Savior. Now Paul is writing to Titus and he says, He redeemed us and purified unto himself a peculiar people. And that included the Gentiles who accepted Jesus. The original chosen people had rejected the Messiah. They killed him, they nailed him to that tree. The peculiar people should be zealous of good works, according to Paul. Peter, in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, see what he says. But you are a chosen generation. Peter is now speaking to the Gentiles, not to the Jews. They were chased away from Judah. They went all over the Mediterranean to the lands of the Gentiles. And now Peter is saying, you are a chosen generation. Gentiles, you are a Jew and you've accepted Jesus, you are a chosen generation. You are a royal priesthood and holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him that hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. We were all in the dark. Peter himself was a dark person. We read of him in the Bible. But he said, when we accept Jesus, we become light unto others. Jesus will change us and make us from being in the dark to be a light that will affect the minds of other people. So that's in the apostolic era. How about us today? In these last days, Revelation 12, verse 17 says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman. The dragon is Satan, the woman is God's church, and went to make war with the remnant of her seeds. The church is there, but it's the remnant. Only a small section of people who go to church are the real remnant now. They are the real chosen people of today. The remnant. How do you identify the remnant? Verse 17 says, they which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. They which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. Commandments of God, all, not only one. Sometimes you want to elaborate on only one. For those who worship on the Sabbath, they always say, oh, we do this. The mark that identifies the remnant are those that keep all the commandments of God. All, whole 10. The remnant keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. You have to know Jesus in order to testify for him. You have to know the God that you serve. You can't be following the commandments like the Jews when they don't know anything about Jesus. They don't want to know anything about Jesus. So keeping the commandment on itself, you are not the remnant. Revelation 19:21 also says, and the remnant were slain. Because they uphold these two things. One, they keep the commandments, the whole commandments of God. And secondly, they have the testimony of Jesus. They know the story of Jesus in detail. Everything that he did is in their mind. They know the story of Jesus, the testimony of Jesus. So wherever they go, they can talk about Jesus. They have the testimony of Jesus and the commandments. But when you have that, this is what you should expect. Read chapter 19, Revelation 19, verse 21. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse. When you stand up